Let's take a trip to yesterday because we're visiting MGM Studios. Hey everybody, I'm here today at, yes, Disney's Hollywood Studios, but did you know when this park opened over 30 years ago, it had a completely different name, it had a completely different theme, and barely any of the opening day stuff still remains? That's right, we are going back in time to Disney's MGM Studios. We're going to talk about what used to be here, what's here now, when things changed, when things showed up. We're going to cover everything that still existed when it was MGM Studios, which turned to Hollywood Studios 2008. And I do think you're going to be surprised at how much is still here from MGM years, and also how much isn't here from MGM years. And to kick off our time travel, here's just about the only thing that still says MGM Studios on it. You've got the director statue right here, and then you have this plaque with the dedication, says Disney MGM Studios on it. The world you have entered was created by the Walt Disney Company and dedicated to Hollywood. Not a place on the map, but a state of mind that exists wherever people dream and wonder and imagine, a place where illusion and reality are fused by technological magic. We welcome you to a Hollywood that never was and always will be. May 1st, 1989, Michael Eisner. That plaque, that sentiment really encompasses what the theme of MGM Studios was when it opened. It was to put you into Hollywood. It was to put you behind the scenes and show you how movies were made. A lot of the attractions and experiences we're going to talk about take you behind the scenes. Now, current Disney's Hollywood Studios has abandoned that theme for the most part, and now it's all about putting you in the movies. A big thing that changed that transition on the theme is the fact that DVDs, Blu-rays, behind-the-scenes specials started coming out and became more popular. Those didn't used to exist, but now, for basically any big movie, you can watch a behind-the-scenes special, you can watch interviews with the cast, you can watch on YouTube how they make certain things. So that was more easily accessible, and you didn't need a theme park for it. What they use Disney's Hollywood Studios now is to put you inside the movies, put you inside your favorite IP, which is why you have lands like Toy Story Land, like Galaxy's Edge. It's why you have Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, where you're put into the cartoon, because they've left the old theme of yesteryear, and now we are being put inside the stories. Disney's MGM Studios officially opened its door on May 1st, 1989, with a push from then CEO Michael Eisner to build a third gate in Walt Disney World that was all about making movies, behind the scenes, how movies are made. It was definitely an original idea and not at all to compete with Universal Studios Orlando, which was also set to open around that time. So they rushed MGM Studios, and they actually did beat Universal by a year. They got their park open first. There wasn't a lot here when it opened in the way of rides and such, but the big one that was here on opening day, the Great Movie Ride. As I'm sure many of you know, the Chinese Theater here, modeled after Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, was home to the Great Movie Ride. This was a beloved attraction. It's probably the most controversial removal of an attraction in Walt Disney World because people adored the Great Movie Ride. And you know what? It was the perfect job for me because I love the movies. No, I didn't actually work there, but that is what they said. This attraction was about 24 minutes long, and it put you inside some of the most iconic films of all time, like Mary Poppins, Indiana Jones, Wizard of Oz, and you had a real-life cast member touring you throughout the show. You had real-life interactions with either a gangster or a cowboy. There were pyro. It ended with a beautiful montage scene. People loved Great Movie Ride. Great Movie Ride did survive through the transition from MGM to Hollywood. In fact, it lasted until 2017 when it was a wrap, and it reopened at the beginning of 2020 as Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Now, I love Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I think it's an adorable attraction. I think it's a great family ride that this park desperately needed. There's a lot of cool tech in here, but people really didn't like it when it opened. Partly, I think, because it opened just shortly after Rise of the Resistance, and partly, of course, because people were such big fans of the Great Movie Ride. Personally, I wish we could live in a world where we had both. I wish they had updated Great Movie Ride with some newer animatronics, maybe swapped out some of the movies, and then put Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway somewhere else, because I think they're both attractions, but I do think the Great Movie Ride needed an update. But I, like many of you, have fond memories of riding it and being terrified of the alien scene. So, are you Team Great Movie Ride or Team Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway? Drop that down in the comments, and we're on with the show. We're gonna start this tour here on Echo Lake, which back in the day was actually part of the biggest hidden Mickey at the time. This whole park was a hidden Mickey. When the park opened, there was no Sunset Boulevard. It stopped right there. And the way that the park was designed, as well as some of the planters and landscaping, it made a giant hidden Mickey, and Echo Lake was one of his ears. Now, Echo Lake is interesting because it's one of the most preserved areas of this park. Many things that are here today existed when the park opened or shortly thereafter. And you're going to see that that's mostly not the case anywhere else because a lot of the other places, the entire land has been demolished. But here you have Dockside Diner. When it originally opened, it was called Min and Bill's Dockside Diner, named after a movie called Min and Bill. It's gone through some changes over the years. The menu's gone through some changes. Currently, you can get things like a cold shrimp roll. They've got some crab dip, different seafood-based items, because of course it is a ship. But I would like to say something. Some of you may remember this. This is my most missed extinct Disney food. Came from this spot right here. It was a chicken Caesar salad sandwich. They took a beautiful, delicious roll, hollowed it out, shoved a chicken Caesar salad in it. It was, I literally make my husband make it sometimes for us because he'll like hand make the bread and it's like so good. But that was one of my favorite theme park foods because it was perfect on a hot day. It was nice and crisp and refreshing. You got this delicious bread, fresh Caesar salad, which I love, shoved in there. And they took that off the menu and they replaced it with like a cone of mac and cheese with hot dogs in it, which is offensive to me. So anyway, that's long gone. Probably no one else knows what I'm talking about because I don't think it lasted very long. But if you ever ate one of those, please let me know. And you could have gotten that here at Min and Bill's. An opening day treat right here is Hollywood and Vine. This is currently the restaurant where you can dine with the characters in their seasonal outfits. I went recently. You're going to get Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, and Pluto, and they wear Halloween outfits at Halloween, Christmas outfits at Christmas, and so on and so forth. It was actually called the Hollywood and Vine Cafeteria, and then it was later added to add Where the Stars Dine. They've gone through some different changes of who is here at the meal. They have the currently Disney Junior characters for breakfast, classic characters for lunch and dinner, and the buffet is returning in a few months. They've done Star Wars weekends here. We've actually had the characters dressed up as different Star Wars characters come to your table, which I really wish they'd resumed that. But Hollywood and Vine, been here since the beginning, and a special shout out, I love this Roger Rabbit nod right here. You can see Roger Rabbit's silhouette because he's jumped out of the window of Eddie Valiant, the PI's office from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That movie was heavily promoted when this park opened because it came out around the same time. So there was a lot of Roger Rabbit, and in fact, at one point there was talk of a whole Roger Rabbit themed land inside this park, which I, for one, am glad doesn't exist. The next stop at Echo Lake, another fan favorite that's been around since the beginning, 50s Prime Time Cafe. Now this one is a nightmare if you're an introvert and don't want your cousin you've never met before coming to your table and making you eat your peas. But if you are into a fun themed experience, that's what you'll get here at 50s Prime Time. And they've had some of those classics on the menu since the beginning. 50s Prime Time is known for having comfort foods like fried chicken and pot roast and meatloaf, and those have been around forever. The theme of the restaurant is to take you back into the 50s, take you back into a sitcom, and then of course your server acts as if they are your long lost cousin. They got the keys to dad's liquor cabinet, but they don't want you to waste mom's cooking, so they literally will force you to eat it, which is very fun if you're me, a nightmare if you're others. Another character that's been here since the beginning, your friend and mine, Dinosaur Gertie here. She is the dinosaur that is home to Dinosaur Gertie's Ice Cream of Extinction, where you can get soft serve as well as Mickey bars, Mickey ice cream sandwiches. But Dinosaur Gertie's has been open from the beginning, and it's a nod to Gertie the Dinosaur, which was one of the first animated cartoons in 1914. So even before we've got Mickey, we had Dinosaur Gertie. So I love this little nod to her here. And by little, I mean she's quite tall. I actually love when they decorate for Christmas at this park and they put an ornament in her mouth. But one cool detail a lot of people don't notice about Dinosaur Gertie's is you can actually see her footprints. And a cute little duck. Hi. Oh, you're just walking in the footprint? Yeah. Hi. Do you want to be friends? Okay. You can actually see Gertie's footprints as she made her way to rest in the water, both here in the grassy knoll, and then if you walk over this way, you can see it in the concrete. But Dinosaur Gertie, she's an icon, a queen, a staple, perhaps the true mascot of the park. She's been here since the beginning. This next one, not quite an opening day attraction, missed it by just a few months. The last remaining of the original stage shows, the original kind of vibe of MGM Studios, of course, Dun, 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 dun. Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. Like I said, Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular opened up just a few months. It opened up in August of 1989, despite the rest of the park opening up in May of that same year. So it just missed the cut for being an opening day attraction. But it is, in my opinion, the last remaining OG MGM thing. This is kind of the last thing that takes you behind the scenes of how they make the movies, aligning with our original theme of this park. Indiana Jones has continued to be incredibly popular even 30 plus years later. It's still the most popular stage show that's here right now. It will still fill up in an 1,000+ person audience. I adore the show. I think it's so much fun because you get that great indie music. You get that feel of old Hollywood. It's one that will surely please a wide range of groups. You've got little kids that like it up through the adults that remember seeing Indiana Jones in film. In theaters when it came out, I expect to only get more popular with the new Indiana Jones movie on the horizon. But this is it. This is like the last OG here in the park. Nestled to the left of the Chinese Theater, you have the Hyperion Theater, which has been around since the beginning. Of course, what's been offered inside the Hyperion Theater is what has changed over time. Currently, it's one of my underrated faves in this park. For the first time in forever, a Frozen sing-along celebration, but it's been some other notable things as well. Fans may remember when it was the American Idol experience, which I actually sang on. That's right, I made it. Somehow. They must not have had very good performers that day, because I cannot sing. They also had Doug Live as a short-lived show here, when you remember that at one point ABC purchased the rights to Doug, and so they had a Doug show. But what opened in this theater was Superstar Television. This one, instead of putting you into the movies, put you behind the small screen, and they included scenes that you could interact with eventually from I Love Lucy, Home Improvement, other famous television shows. Some of you may remember doing that one. So the Hyperion Theater has been around for a while, but the entertainment offered definitely changed along the way. As we walk to the next theater I'm talking about, I want to highlight a little detail that I remember loving up until not that long ago. Does anyone else remember when they had all the busts here of famous people from Hollywood, including like Betty White and Walt Disney, and they had these lovely busts that you could come pose with? I remember it well. Here's a picture of me with the Walt Disney one. All right, the next theater we're going to talk about is now currently called the Mickey Shorts Theater, and it's home to the original animated short Vacation Fun with Mickey and Minnie, and it's got some fun photo ops in the exit of different things from the current Mickey and Minnie cartoons. But some of you may remember when it was a few other things. It was Path to the Jedi at one point, a movie about the making of Star Wars. It was Sounds Dangerous starring Drew Carey. That ran for a really long time. That one opened in 1999. Does anyone else remember Sounds Dangerous starring Drew Carey? Now, we're really talking the 90s when Drew Carey is at the peak of fame. They made that show where you would go in, and then at one point all I remember is like the movie went out and you just had on headphones, so then you heard all these different things, like there were like bees and you were scared of the bees. That's not really all I remember. But when it opened, it was an opening day theater as well. It was the Monster Sound Show, and it was all about how they do sound effects for monster movies. Another opening day dinery right here, Backlot Express. This is a quick service restaurant that serves burgers, chicken tenders, kind of your standard theme park food. And this one's been around since opening as well. This one is fun because when you go in there, it's very simple as far as the concepts goes, but there are some props that you can see up in the rafters and things that's come and gone. They've changed throughout the days, but they do have things, they have props such as things from Horizons and other extinct attractions if you look up there. So not my top spot to recommend for eating, but it is one of the OGs. Another attraction that just barely misses the cutoff for being considered an actual OG, but did open opening year, Star Tours. Of course, now this is the new version Star Tours, The Adventure Continues, which opened up just a few years ago, but the original did open up in December of 1989, using the same technology that they had previously debuted at Body Wars over at Epcot. Now, this attraction makes me very nauseous, especially now that it's in 3D, but one thing I adore about this attraction is the opening day ceremony for it at Disneyland. It includes a ballet of Han, Luke, and Leia, and if you've not seen it, I highly encourage you. Star Tours changed to Star Tours The Adventures Continue TM in 2011, which made the attraction 3D and changed the adventure you're going on. So before it was the same adventure over and over and over again, and now there are over 50 different combinations of beginning, middle, and ends. You could travel to different planets. You don't know which characters you're going to see, making it an attraction that's got a lot of rewritability these days. And right next door to Star Tours, you have got the previous home of the Jedi Training Academy. Jedi Training Academy has still not come back ever since the parks reopened after the closure, but this was a show that opened in 2007 that allowed young Padawans, kids 12 and under, to actually be a part of a show and take on a lightsaber battle with one of the baddies from Star Wars, whether it be Darth Vader, Darth Maul, or at one point Kylo Ren. So it was a very cool show, and it did open. In fact, it's the last thing on my list that opened prior to 2008, early that year when it became Hollywood Studios. So in a way, Jedi Training Academy is the last thing to open. Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater, not an opening day restaurant, but did open shortly after. There wasn't a whole lot going on Commissary Lane, kind of like there is now. There was a restaurant, but Sci-Fi opened a few years later. Baseline Tap House, now one of my favorite spots to grab a nosh and a beer. You may remember when this was Writer's Stop. It was a coffee shop that sold books, and before that, it came out of Ellen's sitcom when it first opened. That's why that was built. Again, not an opening day situation. And here we have made it to one of the greatest changes, the biggest updates in this park, in all of Walt Disney World. You know what I'm talking about, friends. I'm talking about the loss of the Streets of America and the gain of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. They had to close quite a bit to make room for the newest land in this park, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Officially opened in 2019 with Smuggler's Run, the land itself, all the restaurants, Oga's Cantina, and the Rise of the Resistance opened a few months later in December 2019. Right here was the Streets of America, where you had San Francisco Street and New York Street, and it was those painted flat movie sets that made it look, because of forced perspective, like you were actually walking down a street. They had different buildings and facades, and then of course those big paintings that made it look like you were in San Francisco and New York. And with the Streets of America came a lot of different things that had to go as well. I'm talking about fan favorites like the Osborne Spectacular of Dancing Lights, one of my favorite things to ever exist at Disney, the best thing Disney ever did in the holiday season. That hung all over the Streets of America, and I blame Luke Skywalker just a little bit for that one. You also had things like the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids play set. Anyone else remember that? Where it was a larger-than-life play set that allowed you to pretend you were in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids films. You also had a couple of shows that went through some different phases back here. Some wild shows that you wouldn't expect that Disney would have, such as a Goosebumps show where they actually pretended to murder a child on stage, and an Ace Ventura stunt show, which is absolutely ridiculous. We did an old RTT about it if you want to learn more of those. Also back here, and had to be closed to make room for Galaxy's Edge, wasn't considered Streets of America, but just past that you had the Lights Motor Action Theater. That was a stunt show that taught you how they did all those car stunts in movies. They had cars driving through glass, jumping off things, jet skis, cars balancing on two wheels, lots of things on fire. It was an awesome, awesome stunt show. Additionally, back here, you had a theater called the Premier Theater. There was a short-lived Pocahontas show back there, but it was most known for the Hunchback of Notre Dame musical, which I'm sure a lot of you remember. That was one of my favorite musicals when I was little. That was back in the Premier Theater, which was closed to make room for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And last but not least, we lost the Studio Catering Company quick service restaurant and the surrounding details. Some of you might remember they had a water fountain that had the mermaid from Splash in it. They had a Mike and Sully meet and greet back there at one point, but all of those things had to close in order to make room for Galaxy's Edge. Was it all worth it? I don't know, you tell me. Rise of the Resistance, Katsaka's Kettle, Docking Bay, Oga's Smuggler's Run. Was all of that worth losing? Lights, Motors, Action, the Studio Catering Company, the Osborne Lights, ridiculous shows that feature Ace Ventura. I don't know, you tell me. Vote down in the comments. Made our way into Grand Park, which, as you saw on the sign, was established in 2017. Back in this area, it's Muppets themed, which we all love. We've got Muppet Vision 3D, a couple of Muppet shops, Weirdly Mama Melrose back here, as well as Pizza Rizzo. Now, Pizza Rizzo, you may recall previously was Pizza Planet. Of course, that wasn't an opening day dining situation because that movie wasn't out, but this was Pizza Planet, which I keep saying they need to reboot, but they have yet to listen to me. Mama Melrose, also not an opening day restaurant, but came several years later. But the thing I want to talk about is Muppet Vision 3D. This ended up opening in May of 1991, and it is a delight. I love it. I laugh every single time. I think the Muppets are hilarious. But what I really want to talk about is the fact that we got gypped, Muppet fans. That's right, fellow Muppet fans. We weren't supposed to just have a 3D show starring Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Gonzo, Rizzo, Sam Eagle, and the rest of the gang. No, friends. We were supposed to have a whole Muppets-themed land. Disney was in works with Jim Henson to have a whole Muppets-themed land back here. There was going to be the Great Muppet Movie Ride, which was like a spoof of the Great Movie Ride starring the Muppets, teaching you how to operate movies and make movies. But of course, it would all be wrong, and you would have the Muppets reenacting famous films in cinema history, which is like genius. We were also supposed to get Gonzo's Pizza Pandemonium Pizza Parlor, where robot rats were going to bring you the pizza, and an animatronics of the Swedish chef and the chickens were going to be back in the back making the pizzas. I literally would take a terrible puffy pizza from Pizza Rizzo and consider it the finest cuisine if a robot rat had brought it to me. But unfortunately, Jim Henson died when they were in the middle of negotiations, so they were not able to pull off the entire Muppet-themed land. But we've still got Muppet Vision, which has been around since 1991. And I will have a problem if they close it. I know if they close it, I just hope to Miss Piggy that it remains something Muppets, because there needs to be more Muppets in the world. Welcome to Municeburg, I guess, what's left of it. Back here on the other side of Toy Story Land. Wow, this was Pixar Place. Some of you may remember it right here where I'm standing, where this giant Incredibles sign is. This used to be the entrance to Toy Story Mania. Now, technically, Toy Story Mania is part of Disney's Hollywood Studios, not Disney's MGM Studios, because it opened up just a few months after the transition was made. But what's important about talking about this area is that this was where the Backlot Tour was. All of Toy Story Land, as well as this kind of Pixar area, is where the giant Backlot Tour was, which officially closed in 2014. The Backlot Tour was the other opening day ride. It was the only literal ride other than Great Movie Ride, and it took you behind the scenes and taught you how videos are made. You saw things like the Earful Water Tower, you saw movie sets and television sets, including the house from the Golden Girls. You went into costuming. Eventually, you did exciting things like visit Catastrophe Canyon. They chose people from the audience to recreate an action scene on a boat. This is a very fun, albeit very long experience, but again, it did have to close in 2014 to make way for Toy Story Land, which is back behind this Municeburg building where Toy Story Mania is. And I looked at the exit. Does anyone else remember this? They had a rotating exhibit with all kinds of movie props from things that weren't just Disney movies, but famous movies from all time. I remember a really cool villains exhibit one time, and they had costumes and props from things like The Godfather, Pirates of the Caribbean. I do miss the Backlot Tour, but they had to close it for Toy Story Land, which opened up in 2018, and, well, I feel pretty good about Toy Story Land. The other reason I bring up Toy Story Mania is that they had to close the Walt Disney Theater in order to make room for it. Now, even though, again, Toy Story Mania didn't open up until after it became Hollywood Studios, you might remember some of the things that took place in the building when it was still MGM Studios. There were various movie exhibits and they made certain movies, but the most popular thing, the most memorable thing, was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Play It, which was a live game show where contestants from the park were chosen, and you could win things like Disney vacations, Disney merchandise, Disney swag. They had different things like Phone a Friend, and it actually called someone out in the park. It was a lot of fun. I remember loving it. I remember never being old enough to actually play, which made me mad, because I totally would have won with my competitive spirit and anthology of Disney trivia in my brain. But maybe you played. If you played on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Play It, I would like to hear from you down below. Making our way over towards Animation Courtyard, but gotta make a little pit stop here at Walt Disney Presents. This officially opened up in 2001, actually on October 1st, which was Walt Disney World's, 70, 80, 90, 30th anniversary? Is math hard? Yes, it is, but I believe that's correct. Opened up on Walt Disney World's 30th anniversary. The Walt Disney Presents Theater is a tribute to the man himself behind all this magic, Walt Disney. It's a great exhibit where you can see some props and some things from very early Disney animation. You can learn how they did a lot of things, or a lot of the technology they pioneered, and then they usually have a film about Walt Disney narrated by Julie Andrews, but nowadays they swap that out at times for a preview of an upcoming Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars show or movie. Right now it's Lightyear, which very into, obviously. But I love that they added this. I think it's important people know about Walt Disney. My only complaint about this is that they've cut down significantly the exhibit inside, so a lot of the cool props and such are no longer there. We've made it into Animation Courtyard, where we got to talk about a couple of things. First of all, Voyage of the Little Mermaid opened up right here in 1992, featuring, of course, a gigantic nightmare puppet of Ursula. That's what's been in this theater ever since. However, Voyage of the Little Mermaid has still not returned back from the closure. No idea when, if it will come back. It's supposed to, but who knows at this point. Frankly, I'm fine if they don't bring back a gigantic Ursula. Granted, I do like the show because I like the music of The Little Mermaid, but I don't love that giant Ursula puppet. But somehow, scarier than the giant Ursula was Here Come the Muppets, which existed in this theater prior to, where they had life-size versions of your favorite Muppet characters present a show. And I'm just telling you, look at this picture. Tell me that's not a little bit of a nightmare. Right next door to the Voyage of the Little Mermaid, we currently have Star Wars Launch Bay, which is kind of a shell of its former self at this point. This used to be where you had character meet and greets from Star Wars, Chewbacca, BB-8, Darth Vader used to do meet and greets in here, sometimes Kylo Ren. They also had some cool props and pieces from the film, as well as a short film that would rotate about different things about Star Wars, either the making of whatever the current new Star Wars chapter was, or they had one that was really cool all about Star Wars fans. It's Molly. I know I just said characters hadn't come back to Launch Bay yet, but shortly after filming this, Disney announced they're returning. That's right, on July 17th, BB-8, Chewbacca, and even Darth Vader are coming back to Star Wars Launch Bay. I cannot wait. Okay, now back to the video. But most notoriously, prior to being Star Wars Launch Bay, it was the magic of Disney animation. Many people don't know this, but Disney's Hollywood Studios, again, back when it was MGM, was actually a working animation studio, and they animated hit films such as Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear, and one of my personal favorites, Mulan, right here in this very theme park. And when you went into the animation building, you could watch animators at work actually animating films, drawing different characters. There was also the drawing experience, which has been since moved over to Disney's Animal Kingdom, where you would learn to draw a classic Disney character. They had a ton of character meet and greets back here, which were always really fun because they'd have some classic characters, and then they'd usually have somebody new to promo whatever the newest Disney or Pixar film was. I loved it when it was Magic of Disney Animation. Much more so than now that it's Star Wars Launch Bay, and certainly much more so than this kind of like half version of Star Wars Launch Bay. And honestly, they should make this animation based again. Star Wars has enough. You've got a whole land of Star Wars. You've got Star Tours and Jedi Training Company and Tatooine Traders. That's enough. Turn this back into animation themed. There's nothing in there anyway. Please stand with me in the comments. And lastly, over at Animation Courtyard, you currently have the Disney Junior Dance Party, but this theater has been home to several other shows, most of which are on the same theme. This is the Disney Junior Theater, and it was previously Playhouse Disney. Before that, it was Bear in the Big Blue House. But funnily enough, when it opened, it was actually the Soundstage restaurant, and you would dine amongst movie sets and movie props and things. It wasn't character dining initially, though some of the promos do show characters in there, but mostly you dined amongst things such as like things from Beauty and the Beast or things from other Disney films. But this was a restaurant when it opened, and now it's where you can get down with your favorite Disney Junior characters. Another opening day restaurant, and probably my favorite in the park unless you count Katsaka's Outpost, the Hollywood Brown Derby, themed after the same named restaurant in Hollywood. This one's been delighting guests with certain dishes ever since they opened. Some of the classics that are straight from the California version include the Cobb salad, the grapefruit cake, a twist on the grapefruit cake, which is the grapefruit cake martini, and the Shirley Temple. Those are all said to have origins from the real one in Hollywood, and so they of course had to open one right down the street from their version of the Chinese theater here in MGM Studios. I've been to the Brown Derby several different times in videos. You may know that that Cobb salad is one of my favorite Disney eats, and you can get it right here on the lounge without a reservation, as well as cocktails, and you can order off the lounge menu. But I also recently did a review of some other dishes, some of the newly revamped menu, if you want to check that out. It's a signature restaurant, so it's a little pricey, but it's definitely got that old Hollywood vibe when you go in there with all the caricatures, and I enjoy it quite a bit. Next up, we're going to talk about an entire land that was not in opening day, but did open up. The biggest expansion of the park when it was still MGM Studios, ruined the giant hidden Mickey. I'm talking, of course, of Sunset Boulevard. Before we go down there, though, can we pour one out for Starring Rolls Cafe, which was the little bakery right here, had some great sandwiches, cupcakes, coffee. I used to always have breakfast right here when I came to the park, but it's gone, and it's not been replaced by anything, which makes me sad. Sunset Boulevard was, again, the biggest expansion of this park, opened up in 1994 because they were opening up a brand new premier attraction. Any guesses? 1, 2, 3, Lightning McQueen Racing Academy. You got it. No, I'm obviously joking. It was obviously the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. The park needed a thrill ride. It needed to be updated a little bit, so they opened up Tower of Terror in 1994, and that included this entire expansion, which included the restaurants, shopping, the theaters, and eventually more attractions that we would know to love on the end of the street. Interesting thing about the Tower of Terror, it was actually struck by lightning when they were constructing it, which is definitely foreboding and foreshadowing, but also kind of cool and fitting. Tower of Terror has been one of the most popular attractions, not just here in this park, but in all of Walt Disney World since it opened in 1994. I think anyone that's ridden it probably has a fun memory on it. One of my most cherished Disney memories is actually at the Tower of Terror. I was here this summer. It opened with a bunch of my family members. My boy cousins told me I couldn't ride it because I was a girl, and they told my great uncle he couldn't ride it because he was too old. Well, I was about to start crying because they were being mean to me, but my great uncle Bob grabbed my hand and he said, "Come on, Molly, let's show them." And I rode it. We rode it over and over again, and if I was scared, I certainly was not going to let those boys see it, and that's one of my favorite Disney World memories. Right here on Sunset. So I feel like a lot of people have one of those at Tower of Terror, whether it be because you dragged somebody on there that was scared, or because you had way too much fun, you were laughing and screaming, or maybe it's your favorite ride. It's an icon, and it's been here again since 1994. We got MGM Studios to thank for that one, not Hollywood. Just 5 years later, we would open the other smash hit here at the end of Sunset Boulevard, Rock and Roller Coaster, starring Aerosmith. This is the first time that guests in Walt Disney World would get turned upside down, not once, not twice, but 3 times on this rock and roll adventure that goes 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Stars the music of Aerosmith. Who knows if that will ever change, but what has changed since it opened? Steven Tyler's photoshopped finger. Now this one remains one of the most popular rides in the park just because it is the only thing that goes upside down. Everybody loves a good roller coaster, and it's really fun when you've got the music going on. And attractions like Rock and Roller Coaster are what laid the groundwork for the newest attraction in Walt Disney World, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. So Steven Tyler walked so Star-Lord could fly. Another treat here on Sunset Boulevard actually existed before Sunset Boulevard did. That is Beauty and the Beast live on stage. This is that 30-minute retelling of Beauty and the Beast, opened the same day in 1991 that the movie hit theaters, and it's been a fan favorite ever since. They, of course, had to redo where the theater was located, but this show has been around since 1991. And last but certainly not least, one of my favorite things in all of Walt Disney World, particularly in this park, Fantasmic opened here in the Hollywood Hills Amphitheater in 1998. It is still not returned from the closure. They are redoing some of it, but this is that incredible nighttime spectacular that features Mickey fighting the demons of his imagination, which of course are the Disney villains. Is his imagination powerful enough to save the day? Well, you'll have to watch to find out. Spoiler alert. Yes. But this is that great stage show. It features so many characters, projections on the water, fireworks, lasers. It's absolutely incredible. I can't wait for it to reopen. They haven't said exactly when, but they've said this year. So I cannot wait to see the update. Well, friends, a good old-fashioned summer storm has set in just in time for me to wrap up this video. So as you can see, Disney's Hollywood Studios is a lot different than when it opened. There was no Toy Story Land, there was no Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, there weren't a lot of the fan favorite attractions that are here right now, and the theme was completely different. What do you think's better? Old MGM Studios? Think of everything that we got with MGM Studios. Great Movie Ride Studio, Backlot Tour, Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster. Those can all be attributed to MGM Studios, but Disney's Hollywood Studios brought us Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which means Rise of the Resistance, Smuggler's Run, and Cat Sack as popcorn. It brought us Toy Story Land, which means Tachos, Slinky Dog Dash. It even brought Toy Story Mania, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. So there's a lot to be said for both of them. As Walt Disney once said, keep moving forward. We must keep working on progress. So it's interesting to see how this park has changed so drastically, more than any other park since its inception. Which do you like better, Disney's MGM Studios or Disney's Hollywood Studios? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, friends. Now go watch Perfect Morning at Hollywood Studios.